At this very moment, U.S. Vice President JD Vance is sitting in a secure room in Islamabad, Pakistan, conducting the most dangerous diplomatic gamble in decades. He is mediating secret talks between America and Iran, while both nations are literally at war, with missiles flying and troops dying. This is day 42 of active U.S.-Israeli military operations against Iran, and somehow Pakistan has convinced both sides to pause their bombing campaigns long enough to talk. No American official this senior has engaged in Iran negotiations since the Shah fell in 1979. The stakes could not be higher. To understand why this moment is so extraordinary, you need to grasp just how completely severed U.S.-Iran relations have become. On April 7, 1980, exactly 46 years ago, America and Iran formally cut all diplomatic ties. Since that day, the two nations have not spoken directly, not once. Instead, Switzerland represents American interests in Tehran, while Pakistan's embassy in Washington handles Iranian affairs through something called the Iranian Interests Section. When Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei banned all direct talks with America in August 2018, he made Pakistan the only possible bridge between these nuclear-armed adversaries. For over 4 decades, every message, every negotiation, every desperate attempt at communication has flowed through intermediaries. Pakistan has quietly become the single most important diplomatic channel between two nations that control the fate of the global economy. Most Americans have no idea that Pakistan's embassy in Washington essentially functions as Iran's unofficial consulate, processing visas and handling consular services for Iranian citizens who cannot access their own government's representation. The breakthrough came as explosions were still echoing across the Persian Gulf. Intelligence sources confirm that Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar initiated these talks during the most intense phase of the U.S.-Israeli military campaign against Iranian targets. Dar personally reached out to both Washington and Tehran, proposing Islamabad as neutral ground for indirect negotiations. The Pakistani offer came with a crucial sweetener, a temporary ceasefire framework that would allow talks to proceed without active combat operations. President Trump, facing mounting pressure as American casualties began mounting in the conflict, gave Vance unprecedented authority to explore any diplomatic opening. Iran, reportedly struggling with the intensity of American airstrikes on its nuclear facilities, agreed to the Pakistan Channel despite Khamenei's blanket ban on U.S. talks. The ceasefire took effect just hours before Vance's arrival in Islamabad, though disputes over its exact scope continue to create dangerous friction points. Pakistani officials are describing their role as shuttle diplomacy, with Vance meeting Pakistani mediators who then convey messages to Iranian representatives in separate rooms of the same government compound. Turkey and Egypt have both endorsed Pakistan's mediation efforts, with Turkish President Erdogan publicly backing the Islamabad talks as the last chance for preventing wider regional war. The key players in this crisis reveal just how dramatically the geopolitical landscape has shifted. JD Vance, who many still see as Trump's unlikely vice president, now carries the weight of preventing nuclear war on his shoulders. His comments before departing Washington were carefully measured but revealing. He expects positive outcomes but warned that Iran cannot play America in these negotiations. Behind the scenes, Pakistan's prime minister is personally overseeing every detail of the talks, knowing that success would elevate Pakistan's global standing, while failure could make Islamabad a target for both sides' frustration. Iran's delegation, while not containing senior Revolutionary Guard commanders, includes nuclear negotiators who previously worked on the failed 2015 nuclear deal. The Iranian team's presence in Pakistan represents a significant compromise, given that Iranian hardliners view any engagement with America as betrayal. China's role has become particularly intriguing, with Pakistani Deputy Prime Minister Dar flying to Beijing specifically to request Chinese support for the mediation efforts. Beijing's response could determine whether these talks expand into a broader international peace initiative or collapse under the weight of great power competition. For India, Pakistan's emergence as the critical mediator between America and Iran creates a strategic nightmare scenario. Delhi has spent decades building its own relationships with both Washington and Tehran, carefully balancing its growing partnership with America against its crucial energy dependence on Iranian oil. If Pakistan successfully brokers a U.S.-Iran rapprochement, Islamabad suddenly becomes the indispensable power broker in South Asian geopolitics, a role India has desperately sought for itself. Indian strategic planners are particularly concerned about the implications for energy security, given that Iran supplies nearly 20% of India's crude oil imports through carefully structured payment mechanisms designed to evade U.S. sanctions. A Pakistan-mediated deal could either open Iranian energy markets to Indian investment or, conversely, give Islamabad leverage over Indian energy supplies through its special relationship with Tehran. The timing is especially problematic for India's broader regional ambitions, as New Delhi has positioned itself as the natural leader of South Asian diplomacy. Pakistan's success in mediating between nuclear powers directly challenges that narrative and could encourage other regional nations to view Islamabad, not Delhi, as the more effective diplomatic partner. Indian intelligence agencies are reportedly monitoring whether China's potential support for Pakistan's mediation efforts signals a broader Beijing strategy to elevate Pakistan's international profile at India's expense. 3 scenarios could emerge from these unprecedented talks, each carrying massive implications for global stability. The best-case scenario sees Pakistan successfully facilitating a temporary framework agreement that halts active combat operations while establishing regular communication channels between Washington and Tehran. This would not resolve the fundamental disputes over Iran's nuclear program or regional influence operations, but it would prevent immediate escalation to nuclear threshold levels. The worst-case scenario involves the talks collapsing amid mutual accusations of bad faith, potentially triggering an even more intense military confrontation, as both sides conclude that diplomacy has failed completely. Iran has already warned that any U.S. ground troops entering Iranian territory would be set on fire, suggesting that military escalation remains highly probable if negotiations break down. The most likely scenario falls somewhere between these extremes. Pakistan manages to extend the ceasefire and establish regular diplomatic contacts, but substantive agreements remain elusive due to fundamental disagreements over Iran's nuclear program and America's military presence in the region. Here is my surprising prediction. If these talks show any sign of success, Saudi Arabia will immediately demand its own role in the mediation process, potentially sabotaging Pakistan's efforts. Riyadh cannot allow its regional rival Iran to negotiate directly with America through Pakistan's channels, while Saudi Arabia remains sidelined. Watch for Saudi diplomatic interventions within the next 72 hours if Vance reports any breakthrough in Islamabad. What we are witnessing in Islamabad today could reshape the entire Middle Eastern order and determine whether the world slides into a broader nuclear confrontation or steps back from the abyss. Pakistan, a nation often dismissed as politically unstable, now holds the diplomatic keys to preventing World War III. The success or failure of JD Vance's mission will echo through history, potentially marking either the moment when adult supervision returned to U.S.-Iran relations or the final breakdown before catastrophic war. As I speak, negotiators are working through the night in Islamabad, knowing that every hour of their ceasefire brings either hope for peace or the terrible momentum towards something far worse. Subscribe to Global Briefing Room for daily coverage like this. And tell me in the comments, do you think this escalates further? I want to know what you think.